Welcome to Disturbing the Peace. I am your host, Stephen Davis, sitting in for John Amanchukwu, coming to you live from REVWUTRUTH Studios. And with us today is dynamic Christian conservative author, speaker, and youth liberty advocate Ocean Razo, here to discuss how we preserve freedom for the next generation and generations to come. It's all about passing the torch, ladies and gentlemen, and who we are passing the torch to. And after this discussion, you'll see that the torch is indeed in good hands. All here today on Disturbing the Peace.
I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Let's disturb the peace. We're John Amanchukwu. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Disturb the peace. We're John Amanchukwu. Disturb the peace.
Joining me now is Ocean Razo. He is a young dynamic speaker and champion of faith, freedom, and community involvement. And at age 15, he authored the book Preserving Freedom for the Next Generation, which is a blueprint to save America's future. A book, by the way, endorsed by former Congressman Barry Goldwater Jr., best-selling author Eric Metaxas, U.S. Congressman Andy Biggs, and former Sheriff Joe Arpaio. He is a host of the Ocean Razo Show, TPUSA's president of Club America Peoria Activism Hub, and he is a leader of our next generation of young people to reinvigorate civic engagement and participation and constitutionalism. Welcome, Ocean, to Disturbing the Peace.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
You know, it's nothing but nothing short of a pleasure. I was very impressed when I first met you, and you continue to impress. I have to ask this question, though. I have to ask this question. The elephant in the room, especially when looking at you, you're young, right?
Yes.
You're a young man, but while so many people your age are spending their time gaming and watching sports and doom scrolling on social media, you spend your time debating the Constitution, right? You spend your time debating policy issues. You study our founding documents and our founding fathers and our nation's history. Why in the world, Ocean, are you doing what so many adults haven't ever done and won't ever do?
Yeah, well, it comes out of necessity because ultimately a lot of people in my generation, our mentality is to kind of put things off. You know, I have the honor of traveling all across the nation, speaking to thousands of young people. And sadly, I see a similar thread with all of them. They say politics is for adults. You know, I can worry about it when I'm older. It doesn't matter right now. And that is a mentality that I ultimately want to be rid of, because that's how nations fall. And so if you don't fight for freedom, if you don't fight for the Constitution now, you might not be able to fight for it in the future. On the same line, I also see many older folks that say, oh, well, you know, it's our fault. We've given into despair. There's nothing that we can do. That's also a bad mentality that we need to ultimately be rid of. So we need to reinvigorate those who are apathetic, because that's what's plaguing this nation. It's apathy. It's saying, I don't need to worry about that. Someone else will take care of that. Someone else will take up the work. But ultimately, it's really easy to live in a dictatorship. I think we can agree. It's very easy to live in a democratic socialist society because the government's making the decisions for you. It's hard to live in a constitutional republic as we do today because that requires work. It requires knowledge. It requires learning to maintain the system because we are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So instead of doom scrolling or playing video games or sports, you know, those are fine things in moderation. Of course, we can use, you know, social media to our benefit, but when it's all you're doing, when you're neglecting being a good citizen and preserving a society that is a good society, well, you can expect nothing less than that society to collapse. And sadly, I believe that's what we're seeing today. Now, there is a way that we can reverse it. That's only if we work. We need to put in the hard work. You know, you need to learn things that you never thought you'd be learning before. Pick up the Constitution, read it. I mean, the Constitution is the building block of our society. I think we can agree it's what is the foundation of America. And yet a majority of our population have never read it before. A majority of our population will never read it. And a majority won't even know how it works. Or perhaps the Declaration of Independence, our birth certificate, our breakaway from Great Britain. Majority of people in my generation have never picked up that document before. So I think it is important, no, it is imperative that we ensure the future of our nation is preserved through knowledge, through understanding, and through wisdom. And that comes by hard work and putting in the effort to understand and comprehend the way that America was not only created, but formulated and continued through the Declaration of Independence and then through the Constitution.
That's exactly it. And I think you really touched on a subject that is, it's something we talked about, you and me, is apathy. Apathy is one of the biggest issues that we're facing in this day and age, especially in our youngest generations and even some of our older people too. I mean, there's a lot of people that are very apathetic. They just don't want to get involved. They just don't care, or they're very nihilistic and black-pilled, and they just feel like it's all for naught. It's meaningless. It's pointless. What's the point of engaging? This is what the things that I often hear them say. So I agree. It's definitely apathy. And I just want to ask another question in the vein of who you are. I mean, the hardest part, or what is the hardest part of doing this for you? I mean, at your age, is it other students that you have to go up against? Is it adults who don't take this seriously? Is the apathy? Is it something else entirely? What's the hardest thing that you have to encounter when it comes to doing this at your age?
Well, I believe that my generation has been lied to so much. We were told, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be taking action. You're too young. In fact, I've even seen some of that. It's pretty hilarious. And then all these people complain that our nation is going to fall apart. Well, maybe it's because you discouraged the hope of our nation, the next generation, from taking action. Because, I've come to realize this. We can define all these terms. We can say freedom is the ability to do whatever you like so long as you do not harm somebody else's life, liberty, or property. But ultimately, it doesn't matter what your interpretation, it matters what the next generation's interpretation is. Do they understand what freedom is? Because if they don't, if they think that freedom is, I can do whatever I want to do with no boundaries and no limits, as many in my generation sadly do believe, well, then there's a massive issue that presents itself, and the future of our nation is not secured because that generation does not understand the true values of America. So I think that's one of the biggest issues that I've come up on, is just there's no definition of terms. My generation doesn't understand what true freedom is, how important the Constitution is. But, in the vein of democratic socialism, we never even experienced this before. And so we're falling prey to an ideology that we don't even know the true repercussions of what it will be. So that's one issue. But I think another issue that I've encountered, sadly, is political violence. And it honestly is scary because, I just want to have a conversation and debate with people. And I love doing that. I'm so blessed and honored to be able to go out every single day and talk to people and engage with people on issues that they care about and that matter to them. But then you have certain people saying, oh, no, you have to be quiet, you can't talk, or else you will be harmed. That is a mentality of a failing society. That is a mentality of an anti-American society, of a society that hates itself, because that's what we've come to. So I think those are two massive issues. Either we have this so much apathy or so much hatred that we've turned to violence. So I'm looking for, not the medium even, I'm looking for a different ideology, an ideology that values America, an ideology that says we are the greatest nation on the history of the earth, that we should be grateful to be living here, and an ideology that recognizes that freedom is fragile and it's worth preserving.
Freedom is fragile, but worth preserving. I think that's the essence of it. You're right. There's a lot of people out there who just think that freedom is being able to do whatever you want, whenever you want to do it. And that's actually rather destructive. And there's not a working definition within these younger people. And like I said, these older people as well, when it comes to such notions, right? They don't understand the concepts of the Constitution. They don't understand our Declaration of Independence and the beauty that is within these documents and the language that is meant for us to understand and be able to pass down to the next generation of individuals. And I think that's a large problem with what's going on in this day. But let me ask you also, when it comes to who you are and what you're all about, you've been a youth liberty advocate since age 10 years old. I was playing with G.I. Joes at 10 years old. Come on now. What put you on this path, right? Why at age 10 were you put on this path? Was it a specific moment? Did it just build over time? What was the catalyst for all of this?
So first of all, I want to speak to every single parent out there, even if you're just a parental figure. You have, listen, I'm going to go even beyond this. It is not the government's job to educate your children. It is your job. It is your job to instill an ideology into your children that will outlast you. It is your job to make an impact that you will never see the end of because it will resound through generations yet to come. And I am so thoroughly honored and blessed that my parents realize that, you know, they're going to instill this ideology, this conservative ideology into me. And no, I wasn't brainwashed. It's so funny. I see this all the time. People say, oh, well, you're just a young brainwashed MAGA person. No, I was able to be free thinking, you know, but it's important that we have a balance between thinking freely and understanding core values. So at a young age, I went to vote with my parents. Of course, I didn't vote, but they brought me along to the polls to experience it. And they did that with all my siblings. And they're always about, you know, civic participation and being engaged in your community. And so during the 2020 election cycle, I vividly remember being 10 years old at the time, sitting on my couch in front of the TV, watching the election results pour in. Now, I have been called all sorts of names, but I think this is the most hilarious one. I've been called an election denier. And yeah, I know, big shock. But I really did have some questions about what happened, because I had this little booklet open. It had a map of the United States. And I would color in each state as the results were announced. So I had little crayons, blue and red. And I went to bed that night very confident. You know, everything was red. But I wake up the next morning and all of a sudden everything had magically flipped to be blue. Now, I'm no election denier. I'm a truth seeker. And if a 10-year-old realizes there's something wrong, then there's something wrong. Come on. And so I took action. I said, hey, I don't see anyone in my generation that cares about this. A lot of my friends, they did question it. They're like, that's a little strange. My parents were talking about this. I don't need to know about it. I don't need to care about it. And I said, well, no, that's a mentality of people that are not going to care about their society ever. If you're just going to say older people will take care of it, or I can put it off for a couple more years, well, then there's a problem. There's an issue. And I think that the youth need to know the truth. You know, it's important that we're grounded in what is good, true, and beautiful. And so if there is truth that there's something wrong with an election system, then I'm going to go out and proclaim that truth. And so I did, and that kind of set me off on this path. And fast forward 2 years later, during the 2022 election, we're both in Arizona. We know Carrie Lake. And I decided to help her out. I brought a bunch of homeschool families. We went to the polls. I mean, these are kids who don't even know what voting truly is. They saw it for the first time and they loved it. I mean, we had a bunch of local candidates come out, the guy running for mayor, people running for town council, and these kids were like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And they got to see civic participation firsthand. And I kept going. Fast forward 2 more years later, it's the 2024 election cycle. A friend of mine is running for city council. So I knocked on probably over 1,000 doors, 120-degree heat. And it was I had the greatest time. Because I'm speaking with the average voter about issues that matter to them. Election integrity, water, taxation, public services. The list is endless. And, you know, I debated people at the door, 30 minutes. I had a 30-minute debate with this lady about liberalism and the southern border and law enforcement. And I changed her mind. It's so incredible. You know, I was able to persuade her to become switching from a liberal to a moderate, and ultimately, I'm hoping, a conservative. And so, you know, if I can make an impact at 10 years old, 12 years old, 14 years old, well, then everybody we have no excuse. Everybody has a voice. You know, you can just pick up a microphone, go out there, make an impact. So there really wasn't one specific point. I think it was a culmination of my parents instilling truth values into me. And then the 2020 election could be a starting point. And ever since then, I've just been able to continue to save America through civic participation, through engagement, through the community.
It's just that simple. Just getting involved. How about that for an idea? Something that so many people neglect to do, just getting involved, just going out there and getting and participating in our civic duties, participating in our country, not being apathetic, being a go-getter, being the type of person that's going to care about not only this generation, but the next generation of individuals. All right, now, ladies and gentlemen, give us a moment and we'll be right back after this word from our sponsor.
Private student loan debt in the U.S. totals about $300 billion. About $45 billion of that is labeled as distressed. Why refi? Refinances distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They provide you with a custom loan payment based on your ability to pay. Why Refi is not a debt settlement company, and they work with each borrower individually, tailoring each loan to each borrower's specific situation. You will not be calling a faceless call center. Why Refi can reduce your monthly payment and guarantees interest rates under 6%, ensuring affordability and financial relief. Why Refi does not care what your credit score is. When the payment on your distressed or defaulted private student loan is so big that you can't ever get ahead in your finances, Why Refi is surely your best option. You can finally take control of your student loan situation with a plan that works for your monthly budget. Just call 888-WHY-REFI-85 or log on to whyrefi.com. That's YREFY.com.
All right, Ocean. We got to talk about it. You talked about this. You mentioned this earlier. Let's talk about the rise of socialists, right? Particularly when it comes to the DSA in our nation, right? Supported largely by young people. Let's take a look at this clip.
Our role ultimately is to facilitate our own empire's failure.
This is happening all across the country.
The most important thing that we can do is take that empire down from within.
U.S. imperialism is not a thing that can be reformed away. It has to be overthrown through revolutionary struggle.
We're here to actually enact socialism, and socialism is not just better capitalism, it's overthrowing the entire capitalist state.
It's anti-American, it's anti-Jew, it's anti-Israel, it's anti the foundation of how this country was built, and they're winning. We're not talking about reasonable people, but these college-educated people have been indoctrinated. They don't even want the police. They don't want anybody. We got to start focusing back on the college campuses again.
These people said that we have a unique responsibility to act from the heart of the empire, the belly of the beast. So it's important. It's the important thing is that we take it down from within. This is what they're stating. They're being very emphatic about the things that they believe in. What in the world is happening, Ocean? Why are there so many young people falling into the clutches of socialism? And why do they want America to fail?
Okay, so this was a very interesting observation that I didn't really understand until just about this year. We all know the Democratic Party, liberalism in general, has turned into an ideology that hates one man and one man only, and that is President Trump, and anyone associated with him is an evil, terrible person. And so with that mentality, I think that they've realized President Trump is no longer running for president. I mean, unless he runs in 2028, which would be kind of interesting, he is no longer going to be on the ballot. And so they're trying to wage war against a new enemy. And I mean, sadly, look around. Conservatives have adopted the American flag, for example, is sadly now an emblem of conservatism. And, a lot of people say, oh, that's a great thing. I don't think so, because America used to be what united us. We at the end of the day, we could say we're Republican, we're Democrat, we're rich, we're poor, this or that. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we're all American. And now all of a sudden, we've kind of stripped that. And it's become evil. It's become disgusting to have true values in America, according to the radical left. So leftism eats its own. We see this constantly, all the time. I mean, just look what happened in New York City. You had a bunch of liberals running for mayor, and they threw them out and instead instated or voted for Zohran Mamdani. And so democratic socialism is an ideology that ultimately works against itself, because you cannot have a democracy and you cannot have socialism at the same time. So ultimately what's going to happen is you're going to democratically elect leaders, and then you're going to imply socialist policy after electing them, which is not democracy. So this is an ideology that is constantly in battle with itself. There's an idea called the Hegelian dialectic that was created by the philosopher Hegel. And he said you take two contradictory things, you mush them together, and that's how you continue society onward. And that's what we're seeing today. And it's a failure because democratic socialism does not work. But I think the reason it has a grasp on young people is, first, like I said, everybody hates America now.
Yeah.
But secondly, because young people are going to be radicalized in one direction, some direction. Either we're going to be radicalized. For the past few decades, we've been radicalized towards freedom, towards free markets, towards this idea of capitalism, towards America. But now that radicalism has shifted because there are people who think America is oppressive and evil and racist and patriarchal, and therefore we must disavow it. But one more observation on this real fast. I have a friend of mine who's a professor at Hillsdale, and we were talking the other day, and he made a point that is so good. It's so clear. I never thought of this before. I've always known of the story of the Pilgrims trying out socialism. I don't know if you're familiar with this. So Governor William Bradford, he wrote this astounding book. It's called On Plymouth Plantation, and it's the story of the Pilgrims, their first couple of years in America. And they tried out this system of socialism because they're not reaping enough crops. And so they decide, instead of each family working individually towards their own ends, we are going to force families to work and redistribute all the food in spite of how much you work. So, you have some families doing none of the work, sitting at home all day, and they're getting the same amount of crops as a family next door to them who's working super hard and ensuring that the food is the best it can be. And by the end of that, Governor Bradford describes in the book of this man reaching into the mud to find a crawfish, and he's so malnourished because of this system that he dies in that mud. He's so malnourished, he can't get his hand back out. And this is one story. There are so many about these pilgrims who perished because of this socialist system failing. And so the point that my friend made was, he said, if it didn't work with the greatest people, I mean, these are pilgrims, these are religious pioneers escaping England because they want religious freedom. If it didn't work with them, is it going to work in our society that is morally void of reason and truth and morality? And so, he said, in a society as degraded as ours, we can expect it to work even worse. That's what we're seeing today. So if it didn't work in the beginning, if it didn't work in the 1600s, I don't think it's going to work today at all.
Those who don't understand history are doomed to repeat it. And oftentimes the worst aspects of history at that. And this is the essence of an educated mind. I mean, when you understand the history, you understand what it is that we've gone through and the different trials and tribulations that we face and the different systems that were already tried, not just all over these other countries and on these other continents, but here in America. It just goes to show that these things do not work, and these people have been deluded into believing in such a notion as this socialism, or as they like to put it, democratic socialism. It's unbelievable. Ronald Reagan, he famously said that freedom is only a generation away, right? One generation away from extinction. Do you think at this point in time that we are closer to that point of extinction today, or were we closer to extinction back when Reagan said it?
I've been thinking about this. It's really an interesting question. And I believe, sadly, not sadly, I think Abraham Lincoln made a good observation. He said that if this nation were to fall, it would not come from outside forces, it would come from forces from within. I'll look back to the time of Reagan. We had this evil socialist force from the outside of America, but in some cases, in some aspects, it was infiltrating American society. But we didn't have, at that time, I mean, go back and ask those people, do you ever think there will be a socialist Muslim mayor in New York City? They would have said, what are you talking about? What dystopian novel are you reading from? And yet, today, here we are, decades later, and we are willingly electing. It's not like these people were appointed. It's not like these people were, forced into power. It's a majority of people, and young people at that, electing democratic socialist leaders. Now, in Ecclesiastes, in the book of Ecclesiastes, it says there's nothing new under the sun. I think that's one of the most profound statements ever made in the history of mankind. As we look back to the Pilgrims, we look back to Soviet Russia, it never works. They always say, we didn't get it right. We didn't get it right. Well, you've tried for decades and decades, if not centuries, and I don't think it's ever going to be right. So sadly, today I do believe we are closer to losing freedom because we are losing it from within. We are willingly surrendering our freedom, and no one is sounding the alarm. Of course, we have some people going out there saying, oh, we need to fight. But no, I think we need to have more than that. There needs to be a revolution of the mind. Yeah. People need to start thinking, not in a mentality that, like you said, is black-pilled or, we need to replace the system with socialism, but with the mentality that freedom works, but freedom is fragile. Freedom is worth working towards, but you can break it. You can lose it in one generation. So it's up to us. It's up to us ultimately. We have the power to say yes or no. And it's ultimately left up to, will you take action? Will you be a part of this revolution of the mind? Are you willing to fight for freedom? Because it's right there. You have the ability to pick up the mic, to take action, to knock doors, to win the culture war. It's just a question of, are you motivated? Are you activated? And are you willing to do the same to other people to ensure that we can save our nation?
Yeah, we have to actually get active. I'm sick of people just sitting back and watching everyone else do it. Oh, they're going to get it done. I won't register to vote. What is my vote really won't matter. It's just one vote. No, I'll wait and watch everyone else go out and vote, and I'll encourage them to do it. But me, myself, I'm not going to put forth any effort. It's a shame, really, to see the amount of people that are just too lazy to stand for your country. And this is something that I always talk about. Anthony Watson, who's also a part of Turning Point USA, we always say this: if America fails, where the heck do we go? Okay.
Well, I had a friend, we actually talked about this. She's more liberal leaning. And she actually said, I actually asked her that question, where are you going to go? She's like, oh, maybe I'll go to Great Britain. Maybe I'll go to the UK. Oh, where your free speech is silenced because of a tweet? Oh, maybe I'll go to Canada. Canada, are you serious? Canada. They rejected one of the great candidate running for prime minister.
Yes.
There is nowhere else to go to that point. There is nowhere else to go but young people. I just want to make a point real quick. Young people think that there is. They're like, I'll go to another country. I'll move out. No, America's worth fighting for. America's worth fighting for.
It's ignorance at its finest, in the sense that they just don't know what's out there. They haven't been to Canada. They haven't been to Great Britain. They don't know how it works out there. They don't know the amount of knifings that go on. They complain about the Second Amendment here in America, but you don't understand how many knifings are going on in Great Britain, right? You talk about how much money that you don't have in your pocket. You don't understand the exorbitant taxes in Canada, okay? So I wish more people would understand and do a little bit more research in the things that they say and the things that they espouse, especially when it comes to diminishing our country and propping up others. If other countries are so great, why wait? Leave now, right? And we'll bring somebody else who actually wants to be here, as a matter of fact. When it comes to these founding fathers of ours, right? Washington, John Adams, let's say they were resurrected, right? And came and were reawakened in 2026, okay? 2026 America. What do you think would concern them the most if they were to see America in its current state?
So the unique viewpoint of the founders is quite fascinating to me because they were able to do many things. They looked back on history and they saw what worked and what didn't work. And I encourage everyone to read, the Federalist Papers, even the Anti-Federalist Papers, because they talk about the Greeks, the Romans, during the Middle Ages, all these various nations, how they were governed, how their societies worked. And even further than that, there were many documents and charters that existed long before the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution that are worth picking up because it shows the viewpoint of the founders looking to the past, but also toward the present at the time they lived in. Because they were living under tyranny. They were suppressed. So they had these two viewpoints, but then they had a third viewpoint, and that was looking toward the future, right? They were able to predict, they were able to see, we want to build a society that will outlast us, that will outlast our children and our grandchildren, that will continue. Now we're at the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. I think they did a pretty good job. We're still living in a pretty good society compared to other societies. Sure, we're electing democratic socialists, but there's a way to change it. You see, there's societies that were socialist. You got the leader you got and you couldn't complain, but we can change that. We can take action. So I think if the founders were to come back, they wrote entire documents about how tyranny is not good, and they lived that out and they saw firsthand what tyranny does. So they'd probably be questioning why did we fight for? Why did we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor if it meant that 250 years down the line, our descendants would be electing the very people that want to reinstate tyranny, that want the government to make every decision for you every single day, that want the government to fund grocery stores and free bus rides and childcare, and they would probably be questioning that. You know, there's a man that signed the Declaration. His name was Richard Stockton. He was a father to many children, and he had a beautiful farm. And after signing the Declaration, he sent his family away. And he left the care of his farm to his 12-year-old son. 12-year-old son. And that evening, a bunch of loyalists to England came and smashed into his house, and they grabbed him and threw him in jail. And after he was released from prison a few years later, he died in 1781. And he really was never able to see the fruits of his labor. Now, the reason he died was because he was so malnourished. He was, treated horrendously, tortured. This is freezing conditions. And he was willing to pledge his life. He did. He pledged his life, his fortune, and his sacred honor to an idea that was greater than him, to an idea that outlasted him. And so if we brought him back, would we need to ask ourselves, are we ready to present this nation to people that did that? To the thousands and thousands that gave their lives in the Revolutionary War, in the Civil War, in World War I and II, and the various other battles that America's put itself in, not only for our nation, but for freedom as a whole. I mean, America is the most generous nation in the history of the world. Look at World War II. We're like the only nation that gave back to our enemies. We rebuilt infrastructure. We brought back businesses in Germany, knowing they'd be competing with us. We brought back businesses in Japan, knowing they'd be competing with us in the future. Yet we were willing to do that because that's just the mentality of Americans. So, and I think the founders would have loved that, would have loved the fact that we are compassionate, that we are kind, that we are a great nation. But now just a century down the line, are we willing to redo that? Are we great? Are we willing to replenish the values that America once held? So I think it would be tyranny that we're succumbing to tyranny now. All tyrants, tyrants come in all different shapes and sizes and kinds and political ideologies. And this one is, wanting to work towards the same end as tyrants of the past. But we can change. We can do something about it. We don't need to fight a revolution like our founders did, but you can just have a revolution of the mind. We can vote. We can take it to the ballot box and make an impact there. Like you said, there are so many people who think, my vote doesn't matter. My vote doesn't make an impact. That's the wrong mentality. In Arizona, we had an election in 2022 with our attorney general. He lost by 280 votes. He's now my congressman, Abe Hamadeh. 280 people saying, oh, my voice doesn't matter. It's up to us to make an impact. It's up to us to make a change. Your voice, your vote matters more than you could possibly think. That's what builds a society. That's what changes a society.
Isn't that just the most wonderful thing? First of all, your voice is your vote and your vote is your voice. Utilize your voice and your vote to the fullest potential. And one thing that you said earlier about the founding fathers and all these statesmen that came before us, all these people and these soldiers on these battlefields that died for something they don't even realize came to fruition. Here we are in 2026, and we have something so beautiful, so magnificent that these people bled and died for. They lost their fortunes. They died of disease and all these different things just to make sure that we are here in this moment right now in 2026. And the very people that died and bled and propped up America onto their shoulders, we have people here in 2026 who are standing on said shoulders and defecating on their shoulders and saying that their sacrifice does not matter. Their sacrifice does not count. And ultimately, they just want to tear it all down. It is unbelievable. And it starts in the education system, really. And actually, with that being said, I want to read a passage of your book, right? Speaking about such things, because this is, by the way, this book is absolutely phenomenal. This book is, you are definitely a wonderful writer, I must say.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You know, it's well earned, well deserved. I tell you that much. But let me read this passage, and then I'll ask the question, especially when it comes to education, right? This is what you've written. We need to understand that the public education system has been hijacked to indoctrinate. When the educational system first began in early America, the youth were taught the art of debate and persuasion and participated in mock legislatures. Over time, American education has taken a steady decline. What was once a beacon of hope that helped students to think for themselves and to discern right from wrong and to advocate in life is now an institution used to twist the truth and instill a progressive liberal and radical anti-American ideology in the minds of the next generation. Abraham Lincoln once stated that the philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation will be the philosophy of government in the next. That is powerful stuff. But this is yet and still what we see. The indoctrination going on in the educational system and the educational apparatus from K through 12, and obviously when they go beyond in academia and colleges and universities, master's degrees and master's programs and PhD, the whole bit from the top down, it is laden with liberal, or should I say anti-American, not even classical liberal, but progressive liberal ideology trying to indoctrinate the next generation of individuals. But if you could redesign the educational system from the ground up, what are some things that every graduate would have to know before leaving high school as to influence the philosophy of government in their generation, as Abraham Lincoln so eloquently put it?
Yeah, well, when I was doing research for the book, one of the most incredible things I came across was that early American schools participated in mock state legislatures. Now, people are like, okay, what is that supposed to mean? You know, what does it really matter? Well, actually, yes, it does, because those people who are your state senator, your state representative, they are the closest elected officials to you. You know, closer than your congressman, closer than your senator, a heck of a lot closer than the president. So they are the people you go to when you want to make an impact and when you want to make a change. So looking at that, you know, it's important to understand how the system works, how government works, how all these things coincide. And so when you are wanting to make an impact and make a change, you go to these people. And ultimately, like I said, it's about understanding the system. But then you can participate in the system as well. You know, you can run for office. You can, you know, you don't just have to be a voter. You can be a grassroots activist. You can run for office. You can make an impact. So one of the first things I would reinstate into our education system is, first of all, bringing that back. You know, I brought a group of kids to the legislature. I'm blessed to know a lot of state senators, a lot of state representatives very well. And so they agreed, yeah, let's bring some kids down from our Turning Point chapters to experience a day at the Capitol, to see what it's like to be a legislator. And they loved it. They're like, this is such an incredible thing. You know, this is a great job. It's able, you know, you're able to see how government works firsthand. They were able to see bills being amended and passed and, you know, voted on in committees. And they valued that. They enjoyed it. They loved it. So I'd love to bring that back. I also think we need to bring back more debate. You know, we used to have debate, not debate club. You know, it used to be a thing that everyone was taught. Public speaking used to be a skill that everyone had. And now it's like everybody's greatest fear is going on stage. And we need to bring that back. But also, one of the more fun things I did this summer was I took a mock citizenship test, because I just wanted to see. I had a friend say, I did this. You know, it's really cool to get a refresher on history. And I got every answer correct. But that's only because I study and I put in the work. And, you know, I wanted to see, is this, you know, what is this actually doing? And I have to say, I'm sad to say, a lot in my generation probably don't know the issues and topics at play in our citizenship test. So if it was up to me, I'd like to see that test similar to that put in our high schools and public schools for young people to take like every year, just to be able to know what American values truly are and what people sacrificed so that we could be here today. But also bringing back good literature. I'm so honored that you called me a great author, but there are many other authors that I think we also need to read from. And I know Charlie always had, 100 books a year that he would read. And I've been very diligent in trying to emulate that. And I think that we've kind of missed the whole point of literature and composition, learning beautiful things, so that we have a beautiful society. And, now we have this filth that fills public libraries in our school libraries. And I think we need to revert back to things that are good, true, and beautiful, to things that will make an impact in our society. So yeah, I think those are just some of the things that I would do, the bare minimum. But there's much more that we need to work on our education system. But, you can make an impact. These things can be more than just theoretical. You have a school board in your community that you can go to and testify. You can run for school board. I know many people that were concerned parents that ran for school board, and I supported them, and they won. And now they are making an impact for their children, for many other children, and for generations by choosing good curriculum. I've been very honored and with the ability to visit many Turning Point chapters all across Arizona. And I visited one in particular, and a lot of the students were concerned when it came to their history, because they said the way our history curriculum is decided is you take the history textbook and you pass it along to all the minority groups, and they all pick out what is offensive or racist or wrong. And so by the time it circles back, it's whitewashed history. You're not being taught anything. And so I think if you disagree with that, if you disagree with pride flags being in every single classroom, if you disagree with ICE walkouts in the middle of school hours, if you disagree with teachers wanting children to be activists over being educated, then you can take a stand and you can make an impact. Go to your school board, go to your city council meetings, go to your HOA meetings. I mean, every level is important. And ultimately, good governance starts at the grassroots level.
Grassroots, this is something that Turning Point USA is all about, right? Grassroots participation, getting involved, these type of things, civic engagement, being able to understand our processes within government. And definitely when it comes to the citizenship test, there are some people who have just become citizens of America who know more than the average American when it comes to our history and the different processes and the branches of government, things of this nature. We have Americans that don't even know. We have Americans who have all the information at their fingertips. They have the information highway called the internet, and yet they abdicate their responsibilities when it comes to teaching themselves and teaching others just to be spoon-fed by the powers that be. And unfortunately, that's a big problem. You touched on something about history, and I can't wait to be talking about history in just a moment with you. But one more thing about your book. You say in your book, Preserving Freedom, you discuss the conservative and liberal mindset, right? If you had to summarize, right, the greatest differences, the greatest difference or differences between conservative and liberal, what would those differences be?
Yeah, so I think let's start with conservatism. I was at a conference or some kind of event, and we had a big debate about conservatism versus liberalism. And one of the students shouted at the top of his lungs, "Conservative means to conserve." And everybody laughed at him. But I said, wait a minute, he's making a valid point that we kind of lose today.
Yes.
What is the root word of conservatism? It's conserve. Yes, exactly. We're all about, and we're not talking about, I love how Kamala, during the 2024 election, she's like, I want to conserve the environment. I'm a conservative. No, conservative means we want to preserve, protect, ensure that we can pass along traditional values, American values, through morality, reason, logic, comprehensive knowledge. And so that is the root word of conservatism. We want to conserve something. With liberalism, however, I like to attach one word to liberalism: radical liberalism.
Yes.
So that's something they've adopted now, radicalism. Now, what's the root word of radical? It comes from Latin, and it means to uproot, to pull up by the roots. And that's what liberalism seeks to do. It wants to uproot a society from the very core and foundation. So, we saw this attack first on our public institutions during the early 1900s. We had a bunch of professors that came from Europe who were of an atheist, very liberal mindset, very socialist mindset. And they came to America and they went into our public schools and our colleges, and they started an infiltration there. And that continued on. So they attacked that first public institution. Then they attacked the government, and we see this now. They're electing more and more democratic socialists into office. But now we're seeing a pivot to the smallest form of governance, and that is the family. The family is the bedrock of the nation. So liberalism seeks to uproot every single institution, whether it's our education system or our governance. And now it's the family, the smallest institution in a nation. So I think those are the major differences where conservatism looks to build up and preserve, liberalism seeks to tear down and desecrate. And there is a battle being waged now. And people need to realize it's a battle over institutions. It's a battle over mindset and mentality. And so, when we as conservatives need to not only conserve, we need to not only be on the defense, we need to be on the offense, because that's something we've been putting off. I'm fine with critiquing my own side of the party.
Sure.
As long as it doesn't devolve into what's happened today with this whole the conservatives attacking each other and all that going on. I think constructive criticism is a good thing. And right now we have played defense so long and liberalism has played offense. Let's switch it up. Let's go on offense. Let's start attacking liberalism. Let's start planting back those roots instead of uprooting it. Let's go back to traditional values and let's preserve our society.
Something that you said, this is something that Charlie Kirk would always talk about. I am sick and tired, he would say, of conservatives always playing defense. Yep. Let's go on the offensive for once. Let's go back out there and take back our institutions. Let's stop being reactionaries and be the ones that are going to go out there and take back our institutions. You have Antonio Gramsci, the famous Marxist, who would talk about the war of positioning, right? This is what he would always talk about, the war of positioning. And then Rudy Deutschke, another activist later on in the 70s, then coined the phrase, the long march to the institution. Okay. And that's exactly what's been happening. This long march through the institutions, going through our American institutions, whether it comes to sports or media or now social media, at that time, radio, television, politics, the educational system, and just infiltrating that with Marxist ideology over a span of decades. And you look at us now and it's all these things have taken root and they're uprooting the conservative institutions that uphold the bedrock of this society. So how's about we go back on offense and we go back and uproot the liberal institutions, these progressive liberals, these radical liberals, as you so eloquently put it, who are uprooting every element of our conservative society and take back and reinstitute God, family, country back into our society. Now, I want to segue into understanding history because you touched on this and we have to talk about this, okay? Because as we know, those who don't, and I said this earlier, those who don't understand history are doomed to repeat it, particularly the worst aspects of history. Let's take a look at this clip and let me get your reaction to that.
I read through every state constitution. In 1776, 9 of the state constitutions required office holders to be Protestant Christian to hold state office. 3 said all you had to do was be a plain Christian. Ben Franklin signed Pennsylvania's constitution that said every office holder had to make a declaration of belief in God, creator and governor of the universe, rewarder of the good, punisher of the wicked, and acknowledge the scriptures of the Old and New Testament to be given by divine inspiration. So you not only had to lay your hand on a Bible when you were sworn to office, you had to swear you believed in the Bible. Right? And this was Ben Franklin. South Carolina's constitution says the Protestant Christian denomination is the established denomination of the state. So America was established a Christian nation on the state level. And it was the states that created the federal government, and their fear was the federal government would pick one denomination and make it the national one.
Can I just repeat what Bill just said? I mean, every person appointed to any office shall subscribe. I profess faith in God the Father and in Jesus Christ, his only son, and in the Holy Ghost, one God, blessed forevermore. I do acknowledge the Holy Scriptures of the Old and New Testament to be given by divine inspiration. This is what has been told, and these founding fathers and our statesmen have been saying this for the entirety of our founding. But now we're being told that America is not a Christian nation. It's like they deny history or something. Historical revisionism, if you will. Why, first off, why do people believe that America is not a Christian nation? And why are you such a proponent of history?
Okay, let's start with the basic facts. America is a Christian nation, and there are people who despise that fact. You know, and I hear this all the time, when I go out and talk about America being a Christian nation, I get 4 or 5 people that automatically stand up and say, wait a minute, what about the separation of church and state? What about the separation of church and state? Doesn't that philosophy imply that there should be no religion in government? So where does that actually come from? Well, in 1803, there's a letter written to Thomas Jefferson by the Danbury Baptists, and they are concerned that these other Christian denominations are going to oust them and silence them. And Jefferson writes back saying that there should be a wall of separation between church and state, not so that the government does not become religious, so that the church is not infringed upon by the government. Mm-hmm. So I think that modern historians, just despise the idea of Christianity as being the bedrock of American society. They do not like the fact that there are Judeo-Christian ethics everywhere you look throughout our founding documents and throughout the founding of America. And a lot of our modern thought tanks and thinkers and leaders are sadly atheists, they're socialists, they're proponents of progressivism. And so they are constantly at war with Christianity. So I think that's the first, to answer your first question, that is why we are having this revisionist history. It's nothing new. You know, there's always going to be someone who wants to cry out that history didn't occur. It's actually what I say that's true. And it's up to us to set the facts straight. But we need to back up our claims with facts. Unlike them, they can't do that. The facts are on our side. I love that clip that you just played. I was asked to speak at a church recently for the 250th celebration, and I did a deep dive into Christianity in early America. And it's actually in my book. I talk about it significantly. The fact that many states, before the Constitution was adopted, had state constitutions that implicitly stated you needed to be Christian to hold public office. Now, of course, American society has changed. But I still think it's important that we recognize that is where we came from. Going all the way back, there's this great Supreme Court case called Holy Trinity v. United States, which is an awesome name, Holy Trinity v. United States. But it's this church. It is pretty cool. And so basically what happened is there's this law that states that if you are a foreign worker, you cannot get paid to travel to America. This is in the 1800s, and now the reason why was there was a bunch of construction workers coming from different nations to America. And of course, American citizens didn't like that, so they took it to the government, and the government did something about it. They created this bill, this law. And there was this church, Holy Trinity, that their pastor was gone. They needed a new pastor, so they wanted one from the United Kingdom, from Great Britain. And so they paid for his passage over. Well, big mistake. Now the government's upset about that. And so it goes up to court, and it goes all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court at the time, it's a very base Supreme Court. I mean, it's the 1800s. They side with the church, obviously. And the justices, this is a great document. The justices decide not only are they going to give the law, the reason why the law is on the church's side, the reason why America is a Christian nation, and therefore why we should recognize that as a truth statement. They go all the way back. They said, in 1620, the Pilgrims sailed over from Plymouth, England. They signed the Mayflower Compact. What do they say? For the glory of God and the advancement of the Christian faith. That is eloquent writing at the best, proclaiming that the nation from the very beginning was to be Christian nation. Not even they're not even thinking we're going to establish a nation. This is a settlement. They're declaring it to be for the advancement of the Christian faith. You continue on. All these different letters and writings and documents that we have. The colony of Pennsylvania was founded on the idea of advancing the Christian doctrine. Yep. And you continue on. Every state constitution, pretty much, from Maryland to South Carolina, talked about being a Christian to serve on the legislature. And I think that was an important thing that we recognize, that the government, the federal government, wasn't created and then it created the states. The states unified to create a federal government. And one of the many issues that was debated was Christianity. What form of Christianity are we going to subject us to? And they decided we are ultimately going to be a Christian nation, a Judeo-Christian nation, but we're going to try to separate that so we don't make anyone mad. We don't say, Catholicism is going to be the main Christian, Protestantism is going to be the main denomination. So America was founded, its bedrock is Judeo-Christian ethics and morality. 55 out of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence, Bible-believing, church-attending Christians. Even Benjamin Franklin was friends with George Whitefield, one of those prominent preachers at the time. Even people that we think of as deists were reading the Bible. The most quoted book in all of our founding documents is the Bible. It's not John Locke. It's not these great philosophers of the time. It is the Bible. And some of the most quoted books are, Leviticus, these books that show how to run a government. And so we need to recognize that. That is the foundation of our nation. When you take that away, you lose the entire nation. It's like a Jenga tower, and we're removing the bottom blocks for some reason. We're terrible players. We're removing Christianity. We're removing morality and thinking that the tower is going to stay put. But it's not, because that is not how basic architecture works. And that's not how a nation works. That's not how a society functions.
Oh, that is so. It reminds me of this quote. You're talking about morality and this Jenga tower, so to speak. There's a great quote by Charles Carroll. He said, "Without morals, a republic cannot subsist any length of time. They therefore who are decrying the Christian religion are undermining the solid foundation of morals, the best security for the duration of free government." Yet and still, these people continuously try to tear down and pick apart and go after Christianity when it is indeed the solid foundation of morals that upholds and undergirds our society. So I wish more people would understand that. And there were so many people, even some deists who love the fact that we were a Christian nation, love the fact that we were built on Christian morals and ethics. All these different founding fathers and statesmen stated that as fact. So I wish more people would take time to understand history, because obviously the more history you understand, the more you understand the essence of our country and you understand the direction we're supposed to be going down. Now, let me ask you this. When it comes to America being free, can we indeed be free if we abandon the moral foundations the believers found, or the founding fathers found to be that liberty was necessary? They said that liberty was necessary. But a lot of these secularists say that you don't have to be a Christian to uphold America. Can you be?
So John Adams stated a very profound belief. He said, our Constitution is for a religious and moral people. It is wholly inadequate for the government of any other. So also one of my favorite Bible verses of all time is 2 Corinthians 3:17. I love it so much, in fact, that it is in the beginning of my book. It is, for the Lord is a spirit, and where the spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. So it is wholly necessary to be a moral, a nation that at least acknowledges that our foundation was in Christianity, Judeo-Christian ethics, in order for that society to survive. I remember watching Charlie debate a bunch of leftists on campus, and one that I will never forget is, and I saw this on video. I wish I would have been there in person. I saw this on video. He said, one of the guys that came up to him said, well, America is just a Christian oppressive nation, and Christianity is no longer the foundation of America. And Charlie answered, which is some of the most perfect words. He said, I dare you to find another moral system that is better than Christianity. He said, name one. Name one. And the guy just stood there, mouth open, couldn't think of one other system of governance, one other religious system that is as good as Christianity. And there's a great one of the great atheists, according to the leftists of our time, Richard Dawkins, I believe is his name. He even said he likes to live in a culturally Christian nation. He admits that. He says, I'm not a Christian, but I'm a cultural Christian.
Yep.
So if you even have these atheist thinkers stating that they want to live in a Christian culture, there is something about that culture that is worth preserving and that does matter. And I think that's something that Charlie recognized, because he said that so often. He said, I dare you to find another culture, another philosophy, another way of thinking that beats out Christianity on morality, on truth, on reason, on logic, on law. Because ultimately, we have a true sound foundation that has been proven through thousands of years of work. And when we recognize that, we get America. And when we disavow it, we get some sad socialist nation like the USSR. And that's worth recognizing. That is definitely something that we need to go back to, that we need to fall back on. Because when you erase history like that, when you whitewash history, it leads to a nation, like you said, that is doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. And that's what we're doing today. We're repeating socialism, we're repeating communism, sadly. But there is change. I'm going to keep stressing that. I'm going to sound redundant. There is a way to change it. You can get in. You can get into the system. You can be elected to office. You can be a grassroots leader. You can knock on doors. You can talk to one person and influence the vote. You can talk to 5 people. Doesn't matter. Just talk to someone. Have a debate. Have a discussion. Have a conversation. That's how societies get saved. Our nation was born out of conversation. Think about it, the constitutional conventions, these great debates between our founders, and yet we've lost that today. So it's time to bring that back. It's time to bring back truth, reason, morality, debate, dialogue, and conversation.
And that is something you do well. I mean, honestly, the very fact that you're debating constitutional aspects and policy, things of this nature, and you're doing it at 16 years old and doing it before, it's unbelievable that you have this wealth of knowledge when it comes to this. But it just goes to show what happens when someone is diligent when it comes to these such manners, and place them in high regard and in such importance to be able to say, this is what I'm going to study for the sake of my country, for the sake of my countrymen, for the sake of my children, for the sake of all those who come after me, and for to pay homage to those who came before. Right? That's the name of the guy. I got one more question for you. One more question. Let's imagine you are 75 years old, right? And your grandchildren ask, Grandpa, what did you do when America was at a crossroads? What was your role, Grandpa? What do you hope that your answer will ultimately be?
This is actually a question that I pose to audiences all the time. Ultimately, I think we need a revolution, not like not a fighting revolution. We don't need a war against our government. We need a revolution of the mind. We need to bring back common sense. We need to make common sense common again. And so I hope that generations down the line, my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren will be able to say that I was a modern-day founding father at that time. And that we did not, fight in vain, that we fought for an idea that would outlast ourselves. Because, I'm not fighting so that I advance my name. I'm not fighting even for my generation alone. I'm fighting for generations that have yet to come. I'm fighting for an idea that I hope will outlast me and outlive me by decades, if not centuries, and that will continue on the values of America. So I hope that down the line, when my children and grandchildren, and I ask this of you, the viewer, when your children, your grandchildren see your photo on the mantelpiece or your tombstone, what are they going to remember about you? Are they going to say, my aunt, my uncle, mom, dad, grandfather, grandmother, they fought for freedom. They fought for what they believed in. They didn't sit back on the sidelines and just hope that something would go the right way. They actually took up the fight, and they, went out and won the culture war, and they went out and made an impact and made a change at the local level. And then that lasted generations. They went out and made a change. They used their voice. We're all born with the ability to make an impact at some level, any level.
Yes.
And so if I can do it at 15 years old, you can do it at whatever age. If I started at 10 years old, you can do it at any age. And so I hope that we are remembered as modern day, as present time founding fathers, that we continued on the torch of freedom. Because sadly, we're back to that time. We're back to America being threatened by tyrants. We're back to America being overtaxed, being, upset with the times that we're living in. And yet we can make a change. We have an ability that the founders didn't have. You can vote. You can speak freely. You have the First Amendment. You have this debate and dialogue format set up right in front of you. You can pick up the mic. So I pose a question. The fate of our nation is ultimately resting in your hands. The question is, will you take action, and what will you do?
That is a question that people really need to consider. Will you take action, and what will you do? Right? What action will you enact in this life to be able to have it echo through eternity? Right? What actions are you going to take when it comes to our country? Not only when it comes to your spirituality. I love the fact that we're Christians and we're going to stand for Christ and stand for God. Ultimately, that's the main thing that matters. But there's also side quests that we have. And one of our side quests is America. And we need to stand for America and preserve the freedom that is necessary for all of us to be able to enjoy. I want my son to have the same freedoms that I enjoy now, not a socialist dystopian vision that these people, socialist dystopia that they're ultimately trying to put out, but they say it's a utopian vision. They said it's going to be great for us. It's going to be great for our children and our children's children. No, we've seen the route of socialism and communism. I do not want that for my son. I do not want that for my daughter. I do not want that for you. I am the old guard. You are the new guard. It's up to you to continue to preserve freedom. Ocean, I appreciate you for bringing this kind of clarity and conviction at someone your age, 16 years old, and has a wealth of knowledge. And this is only what's going on at 16. I can't imagine what you are at 20. Goodness daggone gracious. It is a real encouragement. That is our show for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Ocean, and thank you all for watching. God bless you, and God bless America.